Anthony, thanks very much for joining us from London. An awful lot of acronyms around in the industry, particularly looking towards ESG. Maybe if you can just try to demystify that, particularly for those looking at it from an investment side.
Perhaps to start with, it's best if we go back to 2015. So in 2015, 193 countries adopted the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Towards the end of 2015, the Paris Agreement was signed by 197 countries. So then moving on in 2016, the Global Reporting Initiative, so GRI, launched the Sustainability Reporting Standards. In 2018, the IPCC report on climate change was published, setting out the urgent change required to limit warming below 1.5 degrees. So that's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. If we move forward to 2019, so the UK sets a legal obligation to achieve net zero by 2050. So in the UK, there's SECR, which is streamlined energy and carbon reporting, which is already applicable to some organisations, and the application is expanding to smaller organisations as well. Then to 2020, the adoption of the EU taxonomy for sustainable activities, so it's the EU classification system for sustainable economic activities. In 2020 as well, TCFD became mandatory for UNPRI signatories, so that's Task Force for Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, and UNPRI is the Principles for Responsible Investment. So then from 1 January 2021, TCFD is mandatory in the UK for certain organisations. From 10th of March 2021, the EU SFDR becomes effective. So that's the Sustainable Finance Disclosure Regulation. And then into 2022 and 2023, some of these measures are being expanded as to who they apply to. So I think generally starting with the larger organizations and then through to smaller organizations. And so add in one or two others as well. SASB, SASB, so that's the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board. There's CDP, so Carbon Disclosure Project, a variety of organizations. I think often trying to achieve similar things, but perhaps either in different countries or different industries.
And there's a crossover, Anthony, in some ways between some of the things which are more voluntary guidelines and some of which are more mandatory regulations. How do you see that developing? Do you think that some of these things that are voluntary at the moment will cross over to being mandatory?
So I think if we look at accounting standards and things like UK GAAP, generally accepted accounting practice principles, or IFRS, International Financial Reporting Standards, there's a lot more familiarity with those and that they've been mandatory for a long time. I think a lot of the non-financial reporting metrics have been voluntary, but that is changing, and some perhaps particularly climate-related regulations are becoming mandatory. So I think that is changing fast.
Really interested to see how this develops, and thanks for helping guide us through some of the complex terminology there, Anthony. Thanks very much for joining us.
Great, thanks very much for having me.